Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter and I'm here today to talk about The Boys Season 3 Episodes 1, 2 and 3, which are titled Payback, The Only Man in the Sky and Barbary Coast. So, yeah, like Season 2, they put out the first 3 episodes of the season all at once. So I watched them over the weekend. This is the first chance I've had to sit down and talk about them. I gave them a quick skim before I came on to refresh my memory. Season 2 was great. Season 2, I think, was a step up in Season 1. So I was very excited to see what they were going to do with Season 3. I knew that Jensen Ackles was coming in as this character named Soldier Boy, and I'll talk about that. But I mean, we'll catch up. We'll see what all the characters are and what some of the themes of the season seem to be shaping up 3 episodes in. It's an 8-episode season again. So, this is 3 out of 8 so far. So we'll have 5 single episodes after this. But, yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing to say is that it does that crazy boys thing where it outdoes its ridiculousness in the first 10 minutes. Like, this show has had lots of big moments of gore, of ridiculous scenarios with its gore or with violence. And the first episode of this season has an Ant-Man style character shrink down and go up a man's pee hole and then sneezes and makes the guy explode. And it is scary, ludicrous, wonderful, all at the same time. I love how they because they saved the title card for after that. They wanted that to be like, no, the boys are back, baby. This is the boys. So the boys title card in the first episode is like a good 10 or so minutes into the episode. It takes a while because I think they wanted to make the statement of no, you're getting your silly stuff. So there's a lot to like in these first 3 episodes. There's a lot of character stuff that I think they're building to that makes a lot of sense for me. I think Billy the Butcher in particular has some interesting ups and downs in this show, this season so far. I'm probably going to blur the episodes together, and obviously I'm not going to talk about everything that happens in every episode because I'm talking about 3 at once, but his arc over these 3 episodes is probably the most fascinating thing about the show this season to me. Obviously, he's given this temptation. He's working with Maeve, and she gives him the Temp V, this new version of the formula that is temporary, as the title would suggest. He can take one of these vials and get superpowers for 24 hours. Obviously, a lot of the marketing, the posters got him with the heat eyes, so you can. It's kind of been hinting at it, but over the course of these 3 episodes, I think him and Homelander are by far where most of the interesting stuff this season has been. And arguably, they've always had the more interesting stuff, for the most part. So, I think it's very interesting watching his progression throughout these 3 episodes. In episode 1, he is frustrated that he's kind of the government lapdog because he's working under Huey at this new division to take care of Supes. He feels a little bit constrained, and it's kind of fascinating to me that at the end of the episode, Homelander comes to see him, and Billy, I think, is almost scared out of like being his old self a little bit when he actually finds himself relating to Homelander. I think that terrifies him. Because Homelander comes in and talks about how, they're holding us down and we want to fly 3, we want to be like, arch nemesis and scorched earth and all that stuff. And I think actually it's a good moment because Homelander is essentially voicing the same concerns and frustrations that Billy's having in his current predicament. He sounds like it's identical. It's 1-to-1. And in the scene, the way he phrases it, it sounds identical to all the things that both of them are going through. Where Homelander feels like he's having to like downplay who he is to fit into the system that he's now a part of, and it's frustrating him. And Billy's kind of the same way. He's having to hold back. He's not killing the Ant-Man dude at the start of the episode because he's playing nice for Huey and for the division. And I kind of love that, and I love that kind of scares him out of like going in the deep end right away. And then the second episode, he starts off with this nightmare of taking the Temp V and having the superpowers and what that could lead to. But he holds back, and it's actually the kid Ryan who later in the episode, when he finally watches the little short film, he's made like a little stop motion animated thing for him to watch, but it's using like an answering machine of like Becca's voice. It's actually that and like caring about the kid that convinces him to take the power, to take Compound V and go after what was it, Gunpowder, I think what the name of the character was. So you already in the first 2 episodes you have this up and down of like him being pulled and like trying to not be himself, and the mirror image, the idea that Homelander and Billy are like the extreme ends of both sides, and I think that's kind of wonderful to compare the two of them and compare the idea that they both want to do things their own way and that they are very much two sides of the same coin. I think that's kind of fascinating. And the idea, when he does come to see him at the end of episode 1, Homelander doesn't kill him. Billy says, "Can we skip to the end where you melt my face off?" And Homelander says, "Where's the sport in that?" And it does kind of sound a little bit like Billy almost has immunity from Homelander, not because he likes Billy or because he doesn't want to like torture him or make his life hell, but in the same way that some arch nemesis in comic books, like, Joker never actually tries to kill Batman because he likes playing with him too much. And I'm not saying it's exactly the same here. I'm not saying it's a 1-to-1 comparison, but there's a little bit of that going on where it's like, no, there's no sport in that. Like, he wants to like have the story with Billy. So it kind of feels like he won't kill him. I mean, I'm not saying he couldn't piss him off. I'm not saying Billy couldn't get under his skin enough that he would snap and kill him. It's possible, but he's not just out for blood immediately. So I think this, bringing up Gunpowder and obviously Billy using his powers. There's a nice moment actually when he uses the heat vision and he slices Gunpowder's head off, but he also slices the car that he's like leaning against. There's just a nice little touch of like the back chunk of the car that's now like separated kind of falls down a second later behind the body as the head's sliding out. It just, it had fun with it. Obviously that's the big set piece Gore moment of the episode, much like the tiny man inside the dick, which of course was ridiculous in and of itself because it looked like a giant penis from the perspective of this tiny man who was standing in front of it. It looked like he was staring down the barrel of like one of the sandworms from Dune. That's what it was like. That's how big it was relative to his size. So all that stuff was fun. But I think the character dynamics, particularly with Billy and Homelander, is what really was singing out to me in these first 3 episodes. And that progresses into the 3rd episode, and Billy, separating himself from Ryan, going full, like, we have to take out Homelander, because the thing that's introduced, this what Maeve gives to him, and this is the big plot stuff of the season, is the idea that there was this team before the 7 called Payback, and it was headlined by Soldier Boy, played by Jensen Ackles. And this is very much... I mean, Soldier Boy is very much like this show's demented version of Captain America, in the same way that Homelander's this evil version of Superman. I'm not sure how awful Soldier Boy is. It's definitely, there's implications. Of course, says that Soldier Boy killed his family, so we have reasons to think he's a scumbag. Is he as bad as Homelander? That remains to be seen. But he very much is Captain America, right? He's the Captain America version. That said, though, I would say that Payback as a whole, because it was this team that existed before the 7 or alongside the 7, as a DC fan, I was actually thinking this was kind of their Justice Society to the Justice League that is the 7. So, I thought that was kind of interesting sort of having that dynamic in there. But the idea is that Soldier Boy, like, he reportedly died stopping like a nuclear meltdown and it killed him. But that's a lie. And there's a weapon that killed him. And if the weapon can take out Soldier Boy, it may kill Homelander. So that is kind of the goal that they have, the main characters, to try and take down Homelander this season. And it leads to Gunpowder, who was one of the team members. It also leads Frenchie and Kimiko to the lady who was on the team. Crimson something? Crimson Skies? I can't remember her name. A lot of new characters to wrap my head around. But they're looking for information and they're trying to figure out where things went. And it actually leads back to Mallory, which is obviously a big thing, is that Mallory had a lot of these answers, and that's a big part of episode 3 is the flashbacks. She tells a story, and Billy feels just outright betrayed that Mallory knew that potentially there was a weapon to take down Homelander and didn't offer it up, didn't talk about it, and kind of blames her and holds her responsible for the death of Becca, for Ryan not having a mother, and kind of like going full nuclear on her effectively. So Billy's super motivated by the end of episode 3. No question. And this is some interesting stuff. I don't buy that Soldier Boy is dead. Like, my first thought is, like, we don't see a body. You know, they say in the flashback, oh, they're taking Soldier Boy's body. And this is going to tie into Frenchie's plot because he sees the Russian gangster lady who Billy wants to meet. So that's presumably something we're going to do next episode. But I'm not convinced Soldier Boy's dead. He could be, and we're only ever going to see him via like photos and flashbacks and things like that. But I suspect we're going to see him in present day, and that he's actually just in hiding somewhere. Maybe the Russians are experimenting on him, trying to like make their own supers or something. There's potential for a few things. Like that's not to say that it wouldn't be worth knowing how they can hold him. Let's say that he is imprisoned, if it's not by choice. Like, how exactly are they keeping him, locked up? And although part of me suspects that he's just living off the grid on his own somewhere for some reason, like he's doing something by choice rather than anything else, I don't know. But I think there's a lot of interesting mythology to this previous team that existed, and sort of like fleshing out the world a little bit more. I'm kind of into it. The only slight critique is I don't know if they ever mentioned Soldier Boy or Payback in the previous seasons. It's been a while since season 2, so I don't remember if they ever brought any of this up before. So the only slight critique I might have is that all of a sudden, like, tons of people are talking about how Soldier Boy died, and it's a big deal that Soldier Boy was killed, and that maybe his death was like covered up, and no one's ever mentioned it before. I don't know. I feel like maybe it's still a little bit like this feels too big to have never like casually brought up somewhere in some way, but. That's a minor quibble. That's not a big deal by any means. So, yeah, the Billy stuff, really good. And kind of like the pull and push of like what's motivating him at any given point of the season so far has been very interesting, where he's like calming down, so because he doesn't want to be too much like Homelander. But then he kind of like rails back up again when he thinks that Ryan deserves to like be avenged and things like there's all these like beats up and down going throughout these 3 episodes that are constantly shifting why he's like doing what he's doing or saying what he's saying. And Homelander, on the other end of that, who's arguably the most fascinating character in the show, continues to be so. Like, there's always that little bit of worry. I think getting into season 2, I was worried, is it going to not work this time because we've already had a season of him. To get into this season, like, have we done too much with them now? Are we going to run out of ideas? And damn it, like, the way they're progressing his story is just working in such a natural way that it's actually just like the fingers on the pulse. Like, they know what they're doing with Homelander, right? I don't know if every single character subplot necessarily is perfect, but Homelander's plot and like the psychology of Homelander has always been the gold star of this show. Other things have been fun, other things have been entertaining. There's other characters that have been heartwarming. You root for Starlight at various points, and you root for other characters, and all these other things. But Homelander's psychology and how he's reacting to things and how much of a threat Homelander is to everyone has always been the gold star. And in this first 3 episodes, he has so much meat to chew on. Like, obviously, has his frustrations in episode 1, which is kind of heightened by Edgar, Gus from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Gus comes in and, Edgar. This is a problem. I know him too well from another show, so it's hard to like shift. But Edgar comes in and makes Starlight co-captain, which is an entertaining scene because Homelander's reactions to this sort of stuff is just exciting to watch. And yeah, he could snap at any moment, and you're waiting for it, kind of. And he has like 2 moments in episode 1 that I really like, where he's with other teammates. There's one with A-Train where he yells at him because A-Train mutters under his breath "F you" after he makes some fat jokes because he's been eating too much junk food. And he gets scary. Like, he gets scary, and A-Train like has to like say sorry, and he's like quivering, and it's really effective. And it's like, oh shit, like he's taking out his frustrations on everyone else because he's not in charge, because he is having some of his power taken away from him. And then likewise, there's a great one in the Deep where the Deep's like on an interview show right before him, and Homelander's pissed about this. And this had like a funny capper though. The thing I liked about this is that Homelander gets very threatening, and he's saying like, why would you be on the same show before me? Why would you get the slot before me? And the Deep kind of realizes at some point that Homelander's pissed and kind of like says, "Yeah, it's ridiculous, it's stupid," and he backs down like a coward and tries to grovel, and Homelander eventually sort of accepts it and walks away. The part of this that made me laugh though was that at the end of the scene, like the Deep's new wife comes in and says something to the effect of, "Man, is it always that intense?" And the Deep goes, "I think that went well." The idea that this interaction that was terrifying, where Homelander might have almost killed him, was a good interaction with Homelander is really funny. I did that gave me a chuckle. I was into that. So you got those things in episode 1. But the big stuff with Homelander, though. Actually, we should also mention that he's got Stormfront. Oh god, this is like this show sometimes like tops itself in its absurdity and just how dark it is. He's got like Stormfront, who's in a hospital bed, privately, and she's hooked up to machines. She's burned. She's missing an arm. She looks, like she's barely alive. Like she's on life support. And he comes in and he's basically trying to use her to fill the role that, I mean, and to an extent she had this role last season and that she's there to prop up his ego, but this was Stillwell's thing in season 1. But as he's like talking to her and voicing all of his frustrations, he just casually whips out his dick and puts it in her hand, like her one hand, and she starts like chugging away like this is a normal thing they do. That even though she's lying on her deathbed, and she's like an awful human being, like she's horrendous, but like the idea that he would put someone who's on their deathbed and make them do this and expect this to be about him is like so classic Homelander that you sort of like nervously laugh at how ridiculous and dark it is. And she starts to bring up that, oh, you're going to lead the master race and blah blah, and he's like, no, enough of that. I am the master race. I don't need to. We don't need a race of masters. That's what I am. That's the point. I'm special. I'm better than everyone else. Like that's what he says. And he walks away, and she's like left there lying, heartbroken that he's not giving her like the attention. That he's like once again disagreeing with what she believes in. And it's just this scene is like a surreal, almost mind bender, and not because it's confusing or because it's like provoking you with like absurd or just because it's so insanely twisted, I guess is the best way of putting it. And yeah, so I had to mention that scene, which obviously leads to the second episode where Homelander, who is tradition on his birthday to go and save someone who's trying to commit suicide, so he just doesn't bother doing this the rest of the year if he sees someone trying to commit suicide. But there's a woman on top of a building, he goes there, and the scene turns into him making her jump. He's trying to talk her down, and then he finds out that Stormfront's committed suicide. Stormfront has bit her own tongue off to commit suicide. And he's hit by this. Like, how could she leave me alone? How could she do this to me? How could she do this to me? I'm Homelander. And he starts comparing himself to Jesus and feeling persecuted, and he convinces this woman to jump. It doesn't convince her, he forces her. He threatens to kill her if she doesn't jump. So she jumps, and we get the splat. And it's again this dark, wonderful thing. And here's so last season had a lot of like the theme, the main, I'd say the central theme was obviously a lot of like social and political themes that are always running throughout the boys. Last season's central theme is definitely sexism and feminism, right? It was very much girls get it done. That was like there throughout a lot of the show in season 2. This season it does, and obviously it's like you had like a villain who was a Nazi, so there was definitely like obviously in racism throughout as well. But I definitely felt a lot of like the race theme playing throughout this in multiple plot lines. The big thing about Homelander's plot is obviously he feels persecuted, and he's kind of this like uber like entitled white guy anyway. But the fact that at the end of this episode, the big scene is him like just sort of losing his shit on the TV like special celebrating his birthday, and he starts like saying, "No, I'm going to be myself." He doesn't like kill everyone. He doesn't kill anyone or anything like that. But he just says, "F this. they're trying to control me. They're trying to make me like, pander to everyone and beg for forgiveness because they keep saying, "How did you not know your girlfriend was a Nazi?" kind of thing. Like, that's a big theme of episode 1, and he's having to like constantly do the PR thing in episode 1. And that's kind of why he's in such a rough place mentally. He says, "No, F that. I'm better than everyone else. I'm going to stop pretending to not be superior. They can't keep me down." And there's a great detail here where you see the new like boyfriend / husband. I don't know if they're married, but MM's like, wife has moved on and has like a new partner, and it's a white guy. And as Homelander's given this speech, we cut to him kind of leaning forward and like sort of like paying attention. Like he's like, "Oh, I feel heard." And that's like, it's pointed out in the next episode that his approval rating amongst white males in the Rust Belt has went up 44%. And Homelander is thrilled that there's like a faction of people who like the real him, that want him to be himself and don't want him to be held down. So the idea that you've got all these entitled white guys who love this and think, "Oh, this is great," like like, yeah, Homelander's speaking to me. And what's so great about this is that last season dealt a lot with social media and Stormfront manipulating it and all that stuff. I think it's very interesting that this season is very neatly transitioning into Homelander actually doing it on accident. Not so much social media specifically, but the idea that he's appealing to this demographic, and he's appealing to people who want to be told that they are right, that they are the persecuted ones, it just makes so much sense, and it fits into the show. It fits into the social and political themes that the show likes to play with, and it feels very natural. So once again, I am very impressed with how it's neatly transitioned Homelander into a new phase of his character, where I don't feel like we're just retreading old ground. I feel like it is escalating and it's growing in a way that makes sense. And he feels vindicated now. He is delighted with himself. He's like, "Oh, I'm up 44%, and the life plus 3 is going to be even better." That's the line he has later in the episode, in episode 3, to Starlight. And then he goes on, the big thing, which is Starlight eventually has to threaten him with the plane footage. Do I have to remind you of that? And I think when me and Connor talked about last season, I think we might have suggested something like this. Not so much the exact way that he threatens it, but the idea being that if they do ever actually ruin his image, that's actually a bad thing ultimately, because then he has nothing to lose, and therefore he has no reason to not just go nuclear and start like murdering millions of people. So Homelander himself has realized this. He says to Starlight, "Go ahead, do it. I would rather be loved. I would rather be like praised and worshipped like a god. But if you take that away, then I'll just be feared, and I'll just go absolute." It's this thing where he's called their bluff, and now the footage is worthless, basically, right? Obviously, it means a lot to other characters. It means a lot in what it means to what Homelander actually is and how horrific it is, and it would alter the public opinion of him. You would hope. At least most people would have a problem with what he did. But ultimately, it isn't this smoking gun or magic bullet that they kind of hoped that it was up until this point. Because yes, he will have no reason to hold back if this is where they go with this. So all of a sudden, Homelander is once again like more threatening and more dangerous and more self-aware of like the control he has in the world than he ever has before, and that is scary. And he flaunts it. He makes the Deep eat an octopus, which, yes, we have the ridiculous sequence of the Deep having sex with his wife, but he's actually looking and communicating with the octopus. It's it's an silly Aquaman joke, but it was funny. I was into that. Homelander brings the Deep back into the team. There's a whole reality show to pick like 2 new members of the 7, and Homelander insisted Deep be one of them. Starlight, I do love that Starlight doesn't even like entertain it. Like, she immediately like starts saying, "No, he face raped me. Come on, no, like I'm not okay with this." And it gets very awkward. I love the performances in this scene though. Homelander, the way he just sort of looks away from her as she says that, I thought was perfect. It was inspired, just douchebag. He does not care about her or what's happened to her, and it's again his self-entitled god complex, and how that ties into just like general shittiness and lack of empathy. So all that stuff worked really well. And obviously one of the new characters is from this reality show, Starlight's like ex-teenage sweetheart, who is ultimately picked to be on the Seven. I will say, like, if I have like some minor like concerns or stuff that I'm not as super into as of yet, it probably is the kind of love triangle that kind of exists with Huey and this new guy. And they've not done anything too bad with it yet, don't get me wrong, it's not been a big deal yet. But obviously there's stuff throughout these 3 episodes where they have communication breakdowns. They're very happy at the start of episode 1, but things break down a little bit. They have a fight. Huey acts like a jealous boyfriend a couple times, and those scenes are a little bit frustrating because I feel like TV shows sometimes feel like they always have to have plot for the relationships, and I don't think that's actually true. I think by the end of season 2, by and large, when you have like a couple that form in season 1 and they have some turmoil in season 2 and they're finally kind of together properly by the end of a season, I do think there's actually a nice restraint and strength in just not having to do anything that threatens the relationship. Like it's tiring always having the relationship under threat. Not every couple is constantly in the brink of possibly breaking up, and it's not to say that like you can have drama elsewhere. It doesn't have to be in the relationship. They can be in a happy relationship and just have plots to deal with that are to do with other things, and that is okay. So I don't necessarily need them teasing potential turmoil in that again. I could do without that, I guess I would say. But that's not to say that everything they have is bad. Obviously Huey's boss, he discovers that she's the head popper, that Neuman's the head popper at the end of episode 1, when this guy who knew her by her real name shows up, and she ends up killing him in the alleyway. Again, this was good gore. This was like the hand exploding first and then the face. Showing that it doesn't have to be the head. Like that's her like hitting a direct target. Like she can just like make a hand explode if she wants to. Her power is seemingly just to make biological entities go boom. which is it's fun. She'll never top the little guy inside the dick in episode 1, I don't think. Which is okay, but worth mentioning. So so he's scared. He gets Kimiko to break his arm in episode 3, so he's got an excuse to not be at work. Because they have a good friendship in episode 1 before he discovers that she's actually this, and she works for Edgar. We see a bit more of that. That he basically adopted her when she was younger. And I do wonder about Edgar's game plan if he ultimately wants Homelander taken out, and maybe like can she kill Homelander? Is that possible? Like would her power work on Homelander? I don't know. Maybe that's something we'll explore later in this season. But curious. I mean, honestly, like Billy and Homelander's plots and like kind of their push and pull, as characters is what I mainly wanted to talk about. To get back to what I was saying about like the main theme this season being racism, and kind of just exploring that in more detail. So with Homelander, like I said, you have his entitled white thing anyway, but then you have him appealing to certain white males, right? So that plays into the theme there. You have A-Train, there's like one scene in episode 3 with his brother where they're talking about how someone who lived in the neighborhood was killed by a soup, in the same way that, an unarmed black man would be killed by a policeman. And it is interesting to do that with the idea of a superhero, just because they're effectively the law enforcement here, but it's even more like it works in the sense that the superpowers are in the show are just an allegory. They're an extreme turned up version of real things, right? To emphasize the point. So having a superhero, or a supposed superhero with a superpower that is just an allegory for a gun in law enforcement makes sense, right? So you do that. You've got that there, and then you have the other thing that Mallory kind of admits to, and it kind of brings up, where part of like her whole thing during the 80s when she was doing all this like secret mission stuff is that she like they were like getting like drugs from the other countries, and they were using this to like fund like stuff and weapons and whatever. Like the details are a bit fuzzy in my head now, but basically they were distributing these drugs to only minority neighborhoods and avoiding the white ones. So like there was a lot of things in episode 3 in particular that were all these things clicked together, because I think all those examples I just gave you were all episode 3. And it really feels like that's the main theme that we're going to be sort of delving into this season. Not that we'll ignore other themes that the show's had anyway, but I think those are the ones that are going to stick out the most. So just to quickly mention some of the other characters and what they're sort of doing, getting up to. Kimiko's really sad in episode 2 because she sees these kids, this brother and sister that reminds her of her own brother, and then when the fight breaks out with the villain lady from Payback, like some guy gets blasted with her like energy blast, and it makes them explode. It's like the mascot in the theme park, and these kids are horrified, and it makes Kimiko feel very bad. And she has this like one-to-one with Ryan about not wanting her superpowers and how he hates his superpowers too. So we're playing with that stuff. Is kind of out of the game. He wants to just try and be a good father, but he's kind of obsessed. And when he finds out Soldier Boy's involved because of the history with his family, that kind of spurs him back into the game. And his ex-wife actually gives kind of like, I don't know if the blessing is the right word, but says like, you know what, I spent a long time trying to stop you from being you, and obviously we were never going to stay together with you being you, but like, no, go back to Billy and see this through, because clearly you're never going to settle if you don't. So, unhinged, basically. He's kind of free to pursue this without worrying about getting back to his family. Obviously, he wants to live. He wants to see his daughter again. He wants to be back with his daughter. And there's a good scene where he freaks out when the smoke alarm goes off, and it scares his daughter a little bit, and it makes him feel bad. Anyway, he has things to work out. He needs to deal with this. So, you've got that stuff. And then, I think Homelander and Billy and the push and pull of what's motivating them and the way it's playing into each other and them being a mirror image of each other and going to extremes and not being held down by the system around them is very good stuff. And Homelander's just kind of like continued exploration of various social issues through his appeal to people and his ego is wonderful. It's really great. And then, some of the love triangle stuff, like I could be doing with less of it. We'll see how that stuff plays out as it goes on. I suppose I should mention the end of episode 3, just kind of the cliffhanger where we leave off, is that it turns out that Homelander wants the public image to be that him and Starlight are now a couple. And he announces this, says #Homelight, and makes Starlight do a second take. There's a bookend to episode 3 where you see Starlight as a kid. Like, she hates doing the Britney Spears song. She doesn't want to be up there. But she kind of like, she has like, she clenches her fist behind her back and sort of, goes through with it anyway. And she does the same at the end when she has to kiss Homelander on camera. And it was interesting. I thought we'd like cut to Huey seeing this. It's interesting we haven't yet. But the funny thing is that Huey said to her earlier in the episode, like, you have to like, keep around him because we might be able to find a weapon to kill him. So you have to do this. So it'll be interesting to see if he acts like a jellish. Apparently I'm going Sean Connery today. If he acts like a jealous prick when he sees her again, and I do worry that it's going to make him unlikable a little bit, the way he reacts to some of this stuff with her, because he was a little bit of a douchebag, in episode 1 and 2 when it came to the love triangle stuff, but it's not so bad. So hopefully that stuff, and the show before has like had things that I've been concerned about, and then it's played out fine because they've not went down the obvious tropes with it. So hopefully that persists, and I'll be happy with how the characters all play off of everything. But yeah, so if I was to compare it to last season, and it's because they did the same thing last year, or not last year, it was like 2 years ago now, but they had the first 3 episodes and then they did weekly after. I would say that episode 3 of season 2, I think, was a more exciting episode, and it felt like a real capper to the first 3. I think by comparison, this doesn't have that oomph by the end of episode 3. if anything, the biggest oomph is the end of episode 2, where Homelander sort of lets loose on the mic on TV. But that's not to say that this isn't doing some really smart stuff and some really engaging stuff that I'm excited to see going forward. It's maybe just not got the big action set piece at the end of episode 3 to give it, they make it feel like a capper, like, oh shit, like they've really like wowed us for the start of the season, and where we went to the rest of it. I'm sure that stuff will be there throughout the rest of the episodes. I have no doubt of it. But just to compare it as a trio of episodes to the trio from last season, I think that crescendoed better up until the end of episode 3, whereas this one is more of an even, like, interspersed, like, full of great moments and good character stuff. But yeah, so. As far as any other critiques go, I don't think I have much, really. Yeah, it's good. The boys is back, and the boys are back in town, to make that joke again, which I'm sure we made last time. But yeah, let me know what you thought of the first 3 episodes of The Boys. I had a good time. Obviously, I didn't talk about every little thing. It's hard to do when you've got 3 episodes in one go to talk about, but I did it this way because if I tried to review each one individually, it would push when I could watch them and then record, and there'd be a chance that I would not be caught up in time for episode 4 and we'd be falling behind. But I do actually want to review the damn show, so I watched the first 3 and here we are, and give you some general thoughts on how I feel at the start of the season. So here we go. Hopefully season 3 lives up to the fantastic season 2. So yeah, good stuff. Let me know what you think of this batch of episodes in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fudge for channel updates. If you want to support the show and support all the content, you can hit the super thanks button under the video, or of course you can go to patreon.com/mailfuzztv and support us for as little as $1 per month and keep all the reviews coming, both in Mailfuzz TV and Mailfuzz Movies, where the movie podcasts and movie reviews are. Go and have a look at that over there if you wish. But that is me, so thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?